Hi everyone, and welcome to Spoilerful Reviews, where I'm going to be talking about story, gameplay, aesthetics, and time value of various video games. Nothing looks as good as a good old trip to an island beach with a bunch of your high school buddies in the middle of the night, right? Wrong. Oxenfree is an indie adventure game made by Night School Studios back in 2016 that uses narrative to creep its audience out while they try and figure out what is going on. It kind of feels like a Telltale game or a point-and-click type style game, except there's a radio that lets you listen into all sorts of cool, spooky things. This game is highly narrative-focused. Oxenfree takes you on a very, and I mean a very, strange adventure with Alex and her pals on this island. So to fully review Oxenfree, especially regarding its story, we need to go through the entire plot because this is its main selling point. Mostly what the hell is going on this island. The narrative and characters of the game are really what shine here, so let's quickly walk through what the heck is actually happening in this game, because there's like ghosts, time jumps, and spooky radios. It's a whole thing. You play as Alex, going with her new stepbrother Jonah and her best pal Ren, headed to Edward's Island for a chill beach drunk teen sesh. Classic horror movie stuff. You meet up with Clarissa, who hates your guts, and her friend Nona, and Ren tells you some spooky stuff about radios picking up weird frequencies and whatever.
Holy crap!
Then you and Jonah decide to go into a cave, which is obviously the best thing to do in these situations, open this triangle Illuminati portal, and then all hell breaks loose on this island. After being teleported around a bunch, you eventually reunite with the ragtag group of teens and realize there's some time loops, objects flying around, radios unlocking portals, ghost photos, possession, classic horror movie stuff that just makes things spooky. Eventually, you do learn that the ghosts are dead soldiers who were in the submarine called the USS Canola, and Kanaloa, sorry, not Canola. The USS Kanaloa, and they're trying to trap the teens on the island so they can possess them. Think like Get Out, where you're just kind of like watching someone else control your body. Eventually, the crew goes to Maggie Adler's old house, which basically just has a boat, but then they find some crazy-ass radio thing and realize that they need to go to the beginning to seal the dimension back up. Alex does so, and then a bunch of multiple endings can happen, based on how you treated the characters throughout the game. Although in every ending that I know of, the teens do manage to get off the island. From being friendly to everyone, to making them all hate you, erasing some people from existence, and even bringing dead relatives back. There's lots of options that kind of keep the game feeling fresh. But then, turns out that the whole game was in a time loop in itself, and then it ends with the first line of dialogue kind of coming back, indicating that Alex and her friends are still stuck in the time loop and are going back to the island again. Honestly, the story is so well done, and they drop plenty of hints about this bigger narrative to keep you engaged. The supernatural stuff is also teased out. It's not like they just hit you like, boom, ghosts. This way, it kind of pulls you in more because you're trying to figure out what the hell is going on, which makes it all the more intriguing. However, when kind of taking a step back, the whole ghost thing isn't really explained, and how radios can open up dimensions is left kind of vague, which I actually think is a good thing, because the developers avoided all these lore dumps and focused on the whole point, which is the teens are trying to escape off this crazy island. Plus, the characters are very endearing, and whether you love them or you hate them, you're stuck with them on that island, and because they are interesting characters, it really makes it interesting. So for a verdict on the story, while it takes a little bit to get going, my god, it's good. It's 100% the main reason to play the game, even if you roughly know what's going on after watching this video. I would recommend it, thumbs up for sure. So for the actual gameplay of Oxenfree, it's very simple. You walk around, talk to characters, give responses, and use your radio sometimes. While I would think it would get frustrating just kind of walking through some of these maps, thankfully, because the characters are so interesting, their conversations actually made me wait around in certain areas just because I wanted to hear what they had to say. I will admit though, the radio stuff can get pretty annoying sometimes. You eventually get Miss Adler's super duper radio with double the channels and double the frequencies, and there were times where I was just sifting through empty frequencies, kind of getting impatient with the game because I had to unlock some bunker or something like that. But of course the radio is interesting because if you go to certain locations and you use the radio, you can pick up on different frequencies, which also kind of tease out what the heck is going on. And so that kind of adds this whole creepy atmosphere, as well as gives you incentive to use the radio and adds to that sense of mystery a bit. It's only when the radio is important for moving on in the story, that's when things kind of got a little frustrating for me. The game also has one of the coolest mechanics I've seen, mostly because it makes sense and is done so well in this context. There are certain points throughout the game where Alex is stuck in time loops, And then a reflection of herself will give her instructions. Stuff that just doesn't make sense, like telling her dead brother to do something, or telling Jonah to talk to his dead mom, or things like that. Then as you continue playing through the story, these things happen. And you can make these decisions against or with the advice of these mirror Alexes throughout the game. Then at the very end, you realize that it's another human player playing Oxenfree that gives the advice at the end of the game. And you become the Alex who is talking to her reflections in the past, or at least another player who is going to be going through Oxenfree and hitting all of these pivotal time moments. The last mechanic, which I think is kind of standard stuff, but is talking to your friends and making them like you or not. While it does play into the ending, the choices seem so mundane and sometimes obvious on what it's supposed to do. However, unlike other story-driven games, it doesn't feel like the dialogue is wasted, because even if it's just like, well, this is obviously going to make them like me more, the dialogue is still interesting, and you want to hear what these characters have to say in response to what you say. As for a verdict for the gameplay of Oxenfree, honestly, it's pretty standard stuff. There's nothing that kind of stands out here that other games haven't done. It just does them pretty well, I guess. It's impossible to talk about the aesthetic of Oxenfree without talking about its art style. It kind of reminds me of like a comic booky type thing, brought to life with a very muted color palette. But then when the ghosts are afoot, it completely changes. And it does really feel out of this world. Seriously, I thought originally that there weren't ghosts and it was actually aliens. Overall, the look of this game is great. From the VHS-style video bars during time loops to the zooming in black and red atmosphere of opening up portals, it's spooky and is definitely done well. The music is also very memorable. It's weird, the music almost blends and builds upon itself throughout the game in response to different things going on. For an example, it starts with cheesy party music because y'all are hanging out on the beach and just kind of having a good time. But then when the portals open up, suddenly the party music starts to warp, and then it just feels incredibly creepy, despite the fact that it is somewhat the same as it was before. Voice acting, on the other hand, well, could probably use a little bit of work. Countless times the teens were in pretty scary places, you know, with ghosts, and they would sound totally fine, if I'm being honest. I understand that this is probably just a limitation of the game design, because game design is very tough, but it felt like sometimes the voices would almost take you out of the moment, and it didn't do the game very much justice because of it.
This is Edward Island's emergency. How may I
Oh
help
my
you?
god, just get the thing done.
By a very large burglar.
I also just wanted to say that I love the retro vibe of the stuff around here. It really makes it feel out of place and out of time, which is exactly tied to the plot. Here's looking at you, radios, tape players, and all of that old tech. Verdict, very strong game aesthetic in Oxenfree. I think the aesthetics work so well with so many of the story elements that it ties together perfectly. Big thumbs up on this one. When talking about the time value of Oxenfree, right now it is $11 on Steam, $6.99 on the Google Play or iOS, $13.50 on the PlayStation 4, $10 on Switch, and $10 on Xbox One. It is free with PC Game Pass and Xbox Game Pass, always worth noting. It relatively took me about 4 hours to finish this game, and for $10, honestly, I would definitely say it is worth the money. Especially if you're into the short horror game stuff that isn't too jump scary but more atmospheric, this is perfect. Plus, when you find out some of the mechanics, it does encourage a bit of a replay. But honestly, the story and the aesthetics and care just put into this game make it worth supporting Night School Studios. I was very impressed by how this whole thing turned out. And that's the spoiler-full review of Oxenfree. It's such a beautiful game, and I still can't believe how well it was put together, even if it was mostly just focused on the story side of things. Let me know if you agree with what I said, or if you disagree, or have any other general comments on Oxenfree, and if you've played it. Also, if you have a neat indie game suggestion that you would like to see, let me know. I have a couple more of these kind of planned out, but I'm looking for new games and new content all the time, so hit me up. Last but not least, if you want to watch me play these games live, then make sure to tune into my Twitch. It is twitch.tv/GhostSoulPlays. Thank you for tuning in for another spoiler-full review. See you later.